There is so much water on this planet. Hi, I'm Bob McDonald. Do you know that they call the Earth water world because we have so much water? Most of the surface of the Earth, 3/4 of it, is covered in this stuff. That's why the Earth is blue. It's the water that gives us this color. Well, have you ever wondered if there are other planets out in space that are covered with water? Well, keep your heads up because we're going in search of water worlds. Ah! Where'd you come from? Everyone who's traveled in space has been amazed at the beautiful blue color of our planet. While orbiting around the Earth in spacecraft, they spend a lot more time flying over water than they do over land. Planet Earth should really be called Planet Ocean. As we look around in space at the other planets, they don't have a blue color. Mercury is gray. It's so close to the sun, its surface is baked, hot, and dry. Venus, which is also closer to the sun than we are, has brownish clouds, but they're not made of water. They're made of deadly sulfuric acid that would burn your skin. And the red planet Mars, farther away from the sun than us, appears to be an ice-cold desert, although it may have been blue and had water in the past. So here we are on our wet water world, which is a very special place. Come on down below, I'll show you what I mean. Now, the amazing thing about the water on our planet is that it comes in 3 different forms. One is the liquid form. That's good for drinking and swimming in. The other is in the form of a gas. When we boil water, it comes off as a vapor. And the third form, if I reach down into my fridge here, is in the form of ice. Now, other planets can have water on them, but depending on where they are, that water may only be in certain forms. For example, if you go to Mars, it's really cold there, so the only form that water can exist in on Mars is as ice. If you go to another planet that's really, really hot, like Venus, it's so hot there, the water can only exist as a vapor. But here on Earth, we have all 3 existing at the same time. I mean, think about it. Here we have our planet that's frozen at the North Pole. There's ice up there. It's frozen at the South Pole in Antarctica. There's ice there. Then 3/4 of the surface of our globe is covered in liquid water, and we have vapor floating around in our atmosphere up in the sky. It's kind of like Goldilocks. Our planet isn't too hot, it isn't too cold, it's just right, which is amazing. Our sun provides all the heat and warmth that we feel here on Earth. It's like our big fire in the sky. But like any fire, you don't want to get too close or you'll burn yourself. And you don't want to be too far away or you'll feel too cold. Well, it turns out that our planet is in just the right place in space. We live in what astronomers call the habitable zone. It's an invisible ring around the sun where the temperature is just right so water can exist in 3 forms at the same time. The zone extends inwards just a little towards Venus and outwards to about the planet Mars. Anywhere outside this zone, water on the surface of a planet or moon will either be ice or vapor. Aren't we lucky to be in just the right place? The Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California is where scientists search for water on other worlds in space. Using robots, they've explored all the planets except Pluto, and they're planning to go there in the near future. So far, it looks like there's lots of water out there. We can see frozen white ice caps covering the north and south poles of Mars. Some scientists believe there's ice buried at the south pole of the moon as well. Many moons going around the largest planets like Jupiter and Saturn are made entirely of ice. Pluto looks like it's also an ice world. And farther out, the comets, with their beautiful tails, are made of, you guessed it, ice. So we can see lots of frozen water in our solar system. The scientists want to know whether there are any places other than the Earth where water is not frozen, it's still liquid. So where do we begin our search for liquid water in a solar system that seems to be frozen solid? Well, how about if we begin our treasure hunt on the planet that's not that much further away from the sun than we are, the one that looks most like the Earth, the red planet, Mars. Now, this is a model of one of the smaller rovers that was sent to Mars. And these rovers are equipped with cameras and all kinds of scientific instruments to tell us what Mars is made of. And to the delight of scientists, they did find evidence of liquid water on Mars. It's just not there today. We've known for decades that Mars has markings on it that look like rivers and lakes. The only problem is that we don't see any water in them. It looks like they dried up a long, long time ago. Rovers named Spirit and Opportunity were sent to areas that looked like they were once wet on Mars. The rovers tried to find out if there was ever any water there. And what they found was both exciting and puzzling.
Well, what we've learned from the rovers really is that there was water there. With these rovers, we have the first direct geochemical evidence that it was water, that it was a liquid that was capable of dissolving salts, dissolving iron. It really starts looking like the case for water is, well, waterproof. And so I think what we've learned is that Mars indeed was a water world. It was probably a cold water world, but still it had water, liquid water, and that's the essential requirement for life. So the results of the rovers have encouraged my enthusiasm for the search for life, and I think that that's a step in the right direction.
If we find liquid water, we could find life, which would make Mars a much more interesting place. Do you like this globe? This is a globe of Mars, and it's pretty realistic because it was made by photographs from spacecraft that we've sent there, and it shows all kinds of neat stuff. You can see the polar ice cap at the North Pole, good skiing there. There are some big volcanoes for mountain climbing. There's all kinds of stuff, craters and everything. It's a really interesting world, but long before we sent robots to Mars, the only way that we could study it was with telescopes here on Earth. And this telescope is really famous for looking at Mars and proving that Martians exist. It was commissioned by an astronomer named Percival Lowell, who was fascinated with Mars because he thought it was a really weird world. The telescope was built more than 100 years ago. And when Percival Lowell swung it up and pointed it towards Mars and looked through this eyepiece, he thought that he saw straight lines crisscrossing the surface. He called them canals. Now, canals are things that we build here on Earth to move water from one place to another or to move ships, like the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal. Percival Lowell thought that, well, Mars is a desert world, and maybe there are people there who are running out of water and they need to transport it from the ice at the North and South Pole down towards cities near the equator. Well, this led to the whole idea of Martians, invasions from Mars, and even the War of the Worlds. Pretty weird stuff.
Invaders from Mars. He saw them land from outer space. He saw them capture innocent people only to destroy.
Well, we haven't found any invading Martians yet, but it does look like there was a time long, long ago when Mars was blue like the Earth. It could have had a huge ocean in the northern hemisphere, a big round sea in the southern hemisphere, and giant rivers all over it. Imagine, once upon a time, you could have gone swimming and sailing on Mars. So something happened to Mars. It used to be a planet that had lakes and rivers and oceans, and then it turned into a dry desert, just like this one. And it's not even a hot desert like this. It's really cold on Mars. There's barely a place where it gets above zero. Now, you've probably heard about climate change. People talk about the climate of the Earth is going to get warmer. Other people say, nah, don't worry about it. Well, Mars proves that planets can change their climates a lot, and it's not always for the better. Mars froze. The water that used to fill its ocean, lakes, and rivers disappeared. The whole planet went into an ice age. Now, the Earth has also had ice ages in the past, but on Mars, once it got cold, it never warmed up again. Today, it's hard to find a place on Mars that isn't below freezing. So how do we go about solving the mystery of what happened to the water on Mars? Well, we look for markings on the surface of Mars that look like they were made by water. Places like this. This is a dried up river valley, and you can tell because of the marks the water made on the ground. Look, you can see that water used to come along here and it made these streaks. You can see some more streaks over here where they swirled around the rocks, went down that way. The big rocks were pushed to either side, and the whole river used to go down here, and it turned to the right. Well, if you don't have a dried-up riverbed in your backyard to have a look at, here's something you can try at home that shows the same effect. All you need is a little bit of sand, and put the sand on something flat, like a really large plate, or in this case, it's a cookie sheet. But just shake it around a little bit and make sure that it's pretty flat on the surface, and then put your cookie sheet on a slope. And then all you need to do is pour some water on it and watch the pattern that the water makes. I'm just going to put it up here at the top like this, and we'll just keep pouring it down, and let's see what kind of pattern we get. As the water pools and starts to run down, it makes very distinctive patterns as it flows. There we are. You can see how it shapes the sand. It makes channels here and here and here as the water flows down. Well, it doesn't matter if you're doing it on a small scale like this or on a big scale like a river, you always get the same markings. And that's what we have to look for on Mars to prove that it used to be wet in the past. So here's how you can do a little detective work to find out where water may have been running across the surface of Mars. Go to this website and look at the images taken by spacecraft that are in orbit around Mars right now. Search through the images and try to find places on Mars that suggest water ran in rivers or pooled in lakes. Scientists believe that water covered parts of Mars about 3 billion years ago. That's about the same time that life was just starting to appear on planet Earth. What kind of strange alien life do you think might have lived in those Martian oceans? Can you guess what world this is?
Well, you go down, and there's no light. Often people forget how dark it is, so you go down and down and down. You hit the bottom of the ocean, you're down 2-3 kilometers. It's dark, so you have to carry your lights with you. It's also extremely cold, about 2 degrees centigrade in the bottom. And that means occasionally you'll hit a fish and it's swimming extremely slowly. But as we move in towards the place where I study, which is hydrothermal vents and the life around them, we work at mid-ocean spreading centers, and it's usually bare rock. So you have this tortured lava, black lava that's all in pillows and long low baits. It's very beautiful. Glitters under the light. But as you get closer to where there is warm water coming out from behind cracks, there begins to be more bacterial mats. So you'll see patches of white, and then a few crabs might appear, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in an area where there's obviously shimmering water that's coming out, and it will be covered with tube worms. So they're white worms, brilliant red plumes on top of them, so it's very colorful. And then when you move into the areas where the really hot water is, the water is coming out superheated, and it comes out in black smoke. And these are usually on top of very large chimneys, so you have to go up in your submersible, and you've got these big chimneys that are covered with organisms, and it's, you know, white, red, black, with a bit of orange thrown in, which is the iron, and then on top these incredible black smokers.
Dr. Verena Tunnicliffe studies strange creatures that live in a place that looks like another planet. But believe it or not, it's right here on Earth, deep down at the bottom of the ocean. It's a place where the sun never shines, with pressures that would crush a human flat in seconds. Yet even here, one of the most extreme environments on our planet, unusual life forms survive. Could similar life exist on other worlds?
What they're doing is they are living around a hole in the ocean floor, which is a weakness, and there's hot water coming out. The hot water has all sorts of goodies dissolved in it, and the bacteria at those vents are living on those goodies. And in this case, they're using the chemical compounds inside that, dissolved in that water, to get their energy. And then once they've got their energy, they're also taking in carbon dioxide. Once the bacteria can grow and start making more bacteria, then other animals can come in and start eating them. And so the bacteria are essentially the grass in this oasis, and then all of the other animals are coming in and eating the bacteria and cropping them. But the bacteria grow so fast that the animals can grow so fast as well. And you can end up supporting a huge pile of meat as a result.
This is the robot that took those pictures at the bottom of the ocean. It's very much like the rovers that we sent to Mars, except instead of wheels to drive around, it's a submarine that can dive thousands of meters underwater. It's equipped with lights, cameras, and a robotic arm, so the scientists on the ship above can control it by remote control and explore the bottom of the ocean through the eyes of the robot. It's just the way NASA scientists see Mars through their robot eyes. This type of submarine wouldn't work on Mars today because the ocean's dried up.
When people look at what Mars might have been like when it still had water on it, they hark back to a very early form of life on our planet. And this would have been 3 to 4 billion years ago. There's no oxygen on our planet. We're a planet entirely covered with water and lots of hydrogen sulfide, lots of methane, and that is the set of conditions that you can get bacteria growing in. So people now looking at Mars think that maybe Mars might have had those same kind of conditions, tectonic activity, volcanic vents, with hot water coming out and lots of dissolved metals and compounds, and maybe the same kinds of bacteria doing the same thing on Mars.
So what do you think when you see these pictures coming down from the rovers?
I think it's wonderful. I think maybe the next rock they look at is going to have a little fossil microbe in it that might have been living at the bottom of an ocean. I'd be very surprised if Mars didn't have life. Once you have water, you have all the possibilities. It's a miracle molecule, and all of the possibilities for the special conditions that are necessary for life.
Okay, so maybe there's no ocean on Mars, but there is another place in space where a submarine like this just might work. It's a weird world that's not even a planet. It's a moon of Jupiter. Jupiter, the largest planet, has more than 60 moons. You could say this huge gaseous planet is a miniature solar system all its own. 4 of those moons are very big, the size of our moon and even larger. They're called the Galilean satellites because Galileo himself discovered them almost 400 years ago when he looked through his new device called a telescope. In the modern era, we've learned that some of these moons are too hot, some are too cold, and one of them may be just right to have liquid water. There's a strange effect that happens with some of these moons of Jupiter. Some of them are hot and some of them are cold. And it's not the same reason that planets are hot or cold. Some planets are hot because they're really close to the sun, and some are cold because they're further away. But the moons of Jupiter are hot or cold for different reasons. It has to do with gravity. Now, first of all, Jupiter has more than a dozen moons going around it. It's like a little solar system. And all these moons, as they go around Jupiter, are pulled by Jupiter's gravity. But every now and then, one moon passes another moon. So the gravity of the the second moon will pull the first moon outwards while Jupiter's trying to pull in. So this moon's caught in a gravitational tug of war, and that causes the moon to be squeezed one way or another. Now, if you just take some Play-Doh and squeeze it, and squeeze it, and squeeze it, and keep going again and again and again and again, if you do this long enough, eventually the Play-Doh starts to feel warm. It's not the warmth of your hand, it's the friction inside that Play-Doh generating heat. Well, the same thing happens on these moons of Jupiter. This gravitational squeezing generates heat on the inside of the moons, and it produces some very strange effects. The outer two moons, Ganymede and Callisto, are not squeezed as much as the others, so they look frozen and battered. Something like our moon, except they're made partly of ice. Io, the one that's closest to Jupiter, is squeezed so much it's hot. So hot, heat inside is spewing out through dozens of volcanoes that throw hot lava out onto the surface. It gives Io a very colorful but strange-looking face, but it's too hot for liquid water there. Then there's Europa. On the outside, it looks like a giant white snowball. And there's good reason for that. It is a snowball. Europa is completely covered in ice. There are no mountains sticking up, no valleys gouged in it, and hardly any craters. If Europa were small enough to hold in your hand, its surface would feel as smooth as an egg. And like an egg, the shell is cracked. The whole surface of Europa looks like a frozen lake, with large chunks of ice that have shifted around and refrozen into odd patterns. But that's only on the outside. Could there be liquid water under that ice?
Well, that's what everybody's looking at now, because that appears to be the only other body in our solar system that might have free water on it. It appears to be an ice-covered body. It's a moon of Jupiter. And when people look at it, it's got this funny cracking pattern on the surface that is very reminiscent of an ice pack. And the fact that it's cracked makes people think that it's probably moving. If it's moving, it may be moving because of something liquid underneath. Now, they look at Europa and they look at the next moon, which is Io, highly volcanically active. So what if you took the volcanic activity of Io and put it underneath the ice of Europa? You've got a source then of heat that might be able to keep a liquid ocean, and now you've got a place where volcanic vents, hot water vents, may be forming. And we've got water, we've got lots of carbon dioxide, we've got, again, all the conditions that might be similar to what happened on Earth. And why not? Maybe we've got more than just microbes. We might have little red organisms.
How would we find that out?
How would we find that out? We've got to go there. We've got to get something there to take a look, because there's only so much I think you can do from space. So I think that the plans are on the right track to see what they can do by getting through the ice to see whether or not there might be liquid water underneath. If there's liquid water, then there must be a heat source. And if there's a heat source, then there's got to be volcanic activity and vents.
Meet Cryobot. It's an ice eater that could melt its way through kilometers of ice. This is the type of robot that could get us down to Europa's ocean. If the Cryobot makes it through Europa's ice, and a submarine with cameras looks around down there, who knows what we'll find? You know, you can see an ice world with your own eyes. It's called Europa, and it's a moon of Jupiter, and you can see it just with a pair of binoculars. All you need to do is find out when Jupiter is up in your sky. So you check your local newspaper or this website, and then once you know where Jupiter is in your sky, it's really easy to spot because it's the brightest planet. In fact, there it is over there. Do you see it? That bright light that's right over the city in the sky, that's the planet Jupiter. It looks like an airplane. So once you spot it, look at it through the binoculars and hold them really, really steady. Better yet, rest the binoculars on top of something so they're very still. And if you look at Jupiter carefully, you will see the planet and then 3 or 4 tiny dots on either side of it. Those are the 4 moons that Galileo saw way back in 1610. One of them, the second one out from Jupiter, is Europa. What you're looking at is an ice world. Imagine what's under that ice. Now, you can also see the planet Mars, which right now happens to be over in that direction. But if you look at it with a pair of binoculars, or better yet, if you know someone who has a telescope, when you look at Mars, you'll see a very distinctive red color. And if you look really carefully, you might see a little tiny white spot at the top or the bottom of the planet, and that's ice at the north or south pole of Mars. This shot of Mars, taken by the Hubble Space Telescope, shows that the ice caps are not perfectly smooth. They grow in the Martian winter and shrink in the summer, so the ice is a bit rough around the edges. And this picture, taken by a spacecraft in orbit around Mars, shows even more detail. The caps are piled up pretty high with ice. Say, did you know that the ice and snow on Mars would be great for skiing? Now, if people ever decide to go to Mars, they should bring their skis, because there's lots of water there, but it's in the form of snow and ice. Now, conditions are a little different, but they're different enough to make it interesting. First of all, the sky on Mars is pink. That makes for a different environment. And you'd have to wear a spacesuit there because the air doesn't have any oxygen in it, but that's no problem. Now, the snow comes in two varieties. One is the familiar water, ice, frozen snow like we have here on Earth, but there's also another kind of snow on top of that. It's frozen carbon dioxide. That's called dry ice. It's called that because it doesn't get wet. So if you happen to fall and get yourself covered in snow, which I tend to do a lot because I'm not a very good skier, you don't get wet. You don't leave puddles back in the chalet when you finish your ski day. Let's go skiing on Mars. Now, here's the fun part. Once you start skiing on Mars, you'll notice that you feel really light on your skis. That's because you don't weigh as much. Mars doesn't have as much gravity as the Earth. You only weigh 1/3 of your weight. So if you're 45 kilos on Earth, you're only 15 kilos on Mars. And that means that you can take jumps and bumps, and you can do all kinds of amazing stunts. Watch this. Here I go. Fooled you, didn't I? You know, we can go skiing on Mars, but we can't go swimming there because all the lakes and the rivers have dried up, or the water is frozen into ice and snow. Maybe you could go swimming on Europa, but you'd be underneath all that ice, and it would be really dark and really cold. You know, astronomers have found more than 100 planets going around other stars, and none of them are like our water world. Maybe there are other planets like Earth out there, and who knows, maybe one of you will be the one to find it. In the meantime, remember...
Keep your hands up!